It's a short question, but it's a huge subject.
At first, I didn't feel anything.
Well, people say it's an electromagnetic field of energy.
I tell them where the vortexes are. Well, I think it's an energy, they say it's an energy field. And when you go to a vortex, there are no signs saying that the vortex is here. You know, supposedly if you get out of your car, you're supposed to feel that or get that feeling of something. You know, you feel something. In my own case, having gone on vortex tours, I've done the whole shtick, as you want to call it. I've done the Indian dance. I've thrown the tobacco over my shoulders and all that stuff, and I'm still waiting for that earth to move under my feet. So, but people do come in and they want to. They believe it. Some people have said they've been to these vortex sites and they felt it. And so, you know, whatever works for you. We have 4 known vortexes in the Sedona area, and we have a sheet that gives information that tells what a vortex is, which is the energy from the earth and the energy of the sky coming together and creating its own energy field.
At first, I didn't feel anything. Different people, some people will get into the edge of town and start feeling it. And for me, it was more like meditation. I had to work at it. I had to gradually, sit here quietly, more meditative state, and then I would begin to feel little tingling sensations. So now I can feel the difference at different sites, and it's just really fun to share with people. We are at the airport vortex in the saddle of the airport, where a lot of people say the energy is outward and upward spiraling. Vortex, therefore spiral. Say Cathedral Rock, they say it's downward and inward, and it's down by Oak Creek. And whenever I'm there, I feel very settled. I just feel very grounded there. And here it's more of a tingling. So those are 2 ways I would describe the difference. What I'd like to share with you today is about a gentleman named Joe. Joe and his wife came from Laredo, Texas about 1.5 years ago. And he was telling me that he had had a stroke 7 years prior to his visit and lost the use of his left arm. His hand was atrophied, and he said, my wife had heard about some healings that had happened here, and she talked me into coming on vacation. And he said, you know, I had nothing to lose. I have an open mind. And so he said, hey, I feel that. I feel a tingling in my shoulder. I haven't felt that since the stroke. I said, great. That's what we're trying to do, is reconnect that. And we got to the second site, and he actually moved his arm like this, and the third site he lifted his arm over his head.
I knew I was coming down here to Arizona and looking for areas to visit, and I came across Sedona and the energy that it carries. And I ran into a local here who told me that each vortex is about 20 miles long, so this area with so many vortexes is really lit up.
In the 70s, there were no vortexes in this area. That's something that arose in the 80s with a channel who said, there's a vortex, there's a vortex. Before that, 10 years before that, there was no vortexes here. When people have a mystical experience, they will often associate it with any number of phenomena. And when people see something they don't, the UFO literally means unidentified flying object. So whatever it is, nobody really knows what they saw. And so I think that it's that ambiguity that makes it very hard for people to wrestle with. And when you have a place where there's a lot of energy, there's more ambiguity, a lot more speculation about what it is and why I feel this way.
Here's what I think a vortex is, and I base this on my experience taking more than 5,000 people out on the land over the last 20 years. I think a vortex is the word we use here in Sedona to represent a place of energy, a place of healing, a place that's kind of a healthy place on the planet where the elements of nature are in harmony. It's a place where a lot of unusual things happen to people that visit, and it's a place that challenges us to think more openly about what's really going on here. If I had to define it in just a couple of words, I would say a vortex, at least the vortex of Sedona, is a sacred site. The plural of the word vortex is either vortexes or vortices. Most people in Sedona say vortexes. Vortices is also perfectly correct. You can use any one you want. Is the concept of a vortex important? Well, it was the best we could do at the time. Before we started using the word vortex, just over 31 years ago, by the way, we didn't have a better word for it at all. Today we do, and that's why I recommend this phrase, sacred site. Sacred site works because it helps people relax. It helps people with a traditional religious background to feel comfortable because they understand sacred sites in Islam and Judaism and Christianity, Buddhism. They've got their sacred sites. And people with an alternative faith, whether they're not spiritual, they're atheist, they're agnostic, or people that are spiritual but not necessarily religious, they feel comfortable with this term as well. It's important that we be aware that something is going on here in Sedona, but the word we use, not quite as important.